A wealthy nation isn't all about bustling cities, towering skyscrapers, and high-tech industries. It can also be sprawling farms and green pastures with sheep. This is the economic identity of New Zealand, leading many to wonder how they did it, and why other countries haven't been able to measure up. The developmental structures of countries often has a similar story. Poor nations have the majority of their population focused on agriculture, both commercial and subsistence. Then, as they become richer, they organise things better, make goods that continue to enrich them, and shift to manufacturing. However, once they get even richer, they outsource all of this and focus on growing their economy through services. This is the traditional economic pathway. In this video, you will see how New Zealand took a different approach to growing and sustaining its economy. New Zealand, the agricultural exception. The three most developed regions on Earth, North America, Europe, and East Asia, all used the renowned stages of development to grow their economy. They went from farming to manufacturing, then to services, to reach the top of the global economy. Now, most of the top nations in these regions employ the majority of their population in banks, offices, and tech firms. They have left farming and manufacturing, outsourcing them to poorer nations. New Zealand, listed as one of the wealthiest countries in the world with a GDP of $257 billion as of 2025, still has agriculture as a significant part of its economy. Yet, the country is service-driven. Almost 3/4 of its workforce and production are service-based. That is about 85% of people living in cities. However, up to 10% of New Zealand's workforce is still in agriculture. This is a significant number compared to other advanced countries. New Zealand leads the world in the export of important food items like butter, lamb, wine, and milk. Out of the 9 countries in the world that have food as one of their largest exports, New Zealand remains the richest. It's not surprising to know that agricultural goods make up to 46% of exports from New Zealand. This is the highest in any high-income country. New Zealand focuses on agriculture because it has proven advantageous for its economy over the years. It is the most agricultural country on Earth, yet not poor. Why is New Zealand so successful? And the only rich agricultural country? Geographic advantages. New Zealand's land and environment were built for agriculture. The country has soil enriched by millions of years, all thanks to volcanic activities. It also has a mild climate that fosters rich pastures and vineyards. This natural wealth allows the nation to transform plants into valuable goods and rear animals effectively. Not every country has this advantage. New Zealand has a wide range of soil types that are fertile for plant growth. Most of them were formed from the volcanic ash and weathered tephra. Areas such as Waikato and south of Auckland are particularly fertile, all thanks to its geological makeup. The country has sedimentary rocks that provide these fertile soils. The climate in New Zealand varies across the country, and this influences the soil formation and nutrients. There are varying degrees of rainfall and temperature across various regions of the nation. Hence, some parts have more fertile soil. These have been discovered and utilised. Others with less fertile soil have been thoroughly managed through fertilisers and other techniques to optimise their productivity. New Zealand is located in the southern hemisphere. This has become an advantage to its food supply to other parts of the world, especially regions in the northern hemisphere. It is no news that this is where the majority of the world's population lives, thus these regions will have similar seasons throughout the year. With the seasons also come specific agricultural products that are needed. The demand, since it would be concentrated at this point on certain goods, might lead to a shortage. This is where New Zealand comes in as a knight in shining armour. New Zealand being in the southern hemisphere means that its seasons are not the same as the rest of the world. This puts the country at an advantage because its season complements those of its primary consumers. When winter comes in Europe, Asia, and North America, New Zealand's summer harvest fills the gap in global demand for food. Still speaking of the advantages, New Zealand's location brought to its agricultural success. Its proximity to China boosts demands for more food. China has a population of about 1.4 billion people. That is a bunch of people with an insatiable demand for food. Right now, China is New Zealand's largest trading partner and has been in that position since 2017. In 2024, trade between China and New Zealand reached 38.26 billion New Zealand dollars, $22.86 billion, with exports to China accounting for 20.6% of New Zealand's total exports and 25% of its total goods exports. However, as this relationship signifies a source of economic boost for New Zealand, it remains a subject of political tension. New Zealand's dependence on China raises concerns about economic over-reliance and the moral implications of trading with a partner that operates under a less democratic system. New Zealand is typically far away from the rest of the world, which means it is out the way of the regular supply chain. New Zealand is about 19,000 kilometers away from Europe, 11,000 kilometers from Asia, and 13,000 kilometers from the US. Unlike other countries that are not so distant from the rest of the world, trade between those countries cuts across various kinds of products. However, New Zealand's remoteness limits it from being involved in the typical global supply chains. This forces the nation to export complete products. The effect is that only 3 high-income nations, Japan, Australia, and the United States, have a trade to GDP ratio that is lower than that of New Zealand. Free trade and low subsidies. New Zealand's success in agriculture is not tied only to its location. The resources are available, however, how they use them goes a long way in determining whether they will be successful or not. Some other countries have competitive advantages, such as natural resources and good farmland. But the people and various regulations have limited the possibilities of those resources. New Zealand not only has the natural advantages, they have the political advantages. What do we mean by this? Let's find out.
The government is delaying the price of agricultural emissions, a move its climate minister refuses to support.
New Zealand remains one of the few countries with the lowest trade barriers. According to tariff rates, New Zealand ranks among the lowest countries globally, sitting at number 12. They got this position because the nation lacks a scale and location to secure easy trade advantages. For New Zealanders to purchase affordable cars, televisions and raw materials, these goods must be imported at competitive prices from abroad. Conversely, the same applies to their exports. The availability of inexpensive food imports from abroad represents fair competition. This approach is particularly unconventional, since attempts to reduce food tariffs previously led to a standstill in negotiations at the World Trade Organization back in 2001, with discussions never resuming. The agricultural sector is widely protected around the world. Annually, over $600 billion is allocated in various forms of governmental assistance to farmers across the globe. This support may take the shape of direct subsidies, marketing boards aimed at stabilizing international prices, direct price controls, production caps to limit supply, or trade barriers. The purpose of these measures is to elevate food prices and enhance farmers' earnings. Despite being a high-stakes area, farmers are regarded as a politically significant group, although they make up a small percentage of the population in many developed nations. They are often geographically concentrated and highly motivated to protest any reduction in their protections. Ironically, while the agricultural sector is thriving, New Zealand provides the least support to its farmers. It has the lowest agricultural subsidies in the OECD, which primarily covers only losses from adverse events like floods and droughts. The reduction of assistance might seem like an effortless way to jeopardize farmers' livelihoods, yet there are some advantages to this strategy. For example, subsidies may prevent farmers from allocating resources to the most productive ventures, causing them to focus on whatever yields the largest payments. This can result in the conversion of unproductive land into farmland, harming the environment, excessive fertilizer use, which may degrade the land and crop productivity over time, or the cultivation of inappropriate crops solely to qualify for the aid. New Zealand's policies ensure farmers continue to farm with little or no interference from the government. The farmers have their association that runs independently of any interference that can tamper with their farming. The structure around farming in New Zealand appeared to be well set, and one is left to wonder, have things always been this organised and favourable in New Zealand? Simple answer is no. How did New Zealand change the narrative around its farming system?
Thousands of farmers who took to streets across Aotearoa today protesting a range of issues from land reclassification.
Support the farmers, we're the backbone of the country.
Historical dependence on farming. Let's take a journey to the past to uncover New Zealand's economic history and how luck is the least reason for New Zealand's success. The nation's economic history reveals a narrative of determination and creativity. In the 1950s, food shortages were prevalent globally following World War II. New Zealand, being an agricultural country, supplied food to the United Kingdom. During this time, it boosted the second highest income per capita worldwide. It was an extremely prosperous nation. The government was primarily made up of farmers, with nearly all cabinet ministers coming from farming backgrounds. Thus, farmers were in a fortunate position. Everything looked fine until people shot themselves in the leg. They saw the varying prices and impact of the climate as a two-edged sword that might hurt them, so they requested policies. They believed intervention from the government was necessary to stabilise income fluctuations. Since the government was made up primarily of farmers, they agreed. Following this, marketing boards and other systems that impose restrictions on the farming sector were established. These boards regulated production levels and prices based on the decisions of the government and often farmer-controlled boards. Soon, the support and regulation of the agricultural sector became problematic. This also adds to the fact that New Zealand was a small nation. Even back then, the government did not envision agriculture as the future of New Zealand's economy. There was a push to develop industries within the nation to provide employment in other sectors. Therefore, the government began enforcing import tariffs and quotas on almost all goods, including cars and televisions. The objective was to drive up the cost of imported products and to make local manufacturing more competitive. New Zealand excluded foreign competitors, shielded jobs, and maintained almost no unemployment until the 1970s. The agricultural revenue provided enough wealth to maintain employment. However, the trade restrictions created avoidable expenses within the economy. Despite this, New Zealand continued going in this direction until certain events occurred that changed the narrative. The Reform. New Zealand faced two significant economic upheavals. The first occurred in 1973 when Britain joined the European Union, causing a major reduction in the market that had previously taken much of its exports. At the time, New Zealand was a guardian for the UK. It relied heavily on the UK for trade and suffered when Britain joined the EU. The crisis was caused by falling wool prices and a drastic reduction in trade. The second shock was linked to rising oil prices. Essentially, New Zealand had been operating in a cosy bubble, where a top-down approach to pricing disregarded market principles, leading to rampant inflation. Moreover, New Zealand was tightly controlled, with interest rates and many aspects of the economy being regulated. After a decade, New Zealand found itself in both fiscal and financial turmoil in 1984. The government could no longer finance its expenditures, having accumulated significant deficits and borrowed extensively from foreign sources to keep its economy afloat. Fortunately, the Federated Farmers of New Zealand recognised that relying on government assistance was no longer viable.
The controls on moving money in and out of New Zealand were ended. There was an end to farm subsidies. Many government departments became state-owned enterprises, meaning they were required to make a profit.
They were losing their competitive edge in international markets and needed to make changes. The people urged the government to eliminate subsidies while also reforming the broader New Zealand economy. In response, the government enacted these reforms, but it was a painful process for farmers, as it was a left-leaning administration overseeing the transition. The government prioritised agricultural reform first, recognising that farmers historically did not support it. The complete liberalisation of the rest of the economy took an additional 6 years. Today, New Zealand has one of the most open and deregulated economies globally. Apart from a few tariffs on footwear and some apparel, they have an unrestricted exchange at the borders for all goods. Previously, if you had financial means, you could dodge tariffs. For instance, if you wanted to purchase a car or a television, you could go abroad, buy one, and bring it back to New Zealand. Now, you can easily acquire anything from anywhere in the world while in New Zealand, and it's wonderful. The significant change for the agricultural sector in New Zealand was that, after experiencing a challenging transition, farming authority was restored to the farmers. The government stepped back from their day-to-day lives. The primary issue they addressed swiftly was that farm income depended entirely on meeting consumer demands. In the past, farmers in New Zealand aimed to meet the requirements of government officials. They had 70 million sheep and around 50 million lambs, with the meat industry processing 6 million lambs into blood and bone in a single year due to low demand. During the toughest times of the post-deregulation era, particularly during a drought in Canterbury, farmers received only $6 for each lamb. However, the narrative has changed. Now, New Zealand concentrates on the consumer. Processors effectively relay market signals, which leads to better financial returns for farmers. Farmers now produce precisely what consumers desire in the most cost-efficient way. By adhering to market criteria, farmers can earn between $60 and $100 for each lamb, depending on the time of the year. Another beneficial outcome of the reform process was that farmers began aligning their agricultural practices more closely with the specific characteristics of their land. Inefficient use of resources arises if there is no strong alignment with the land type, making it difficult to reduce costs enough to stay competitive. New Zealand has decreased its sheep population from 70 million to 40 million, yet remains at a similar level to sheep meat production. They have expanded their dairy herd from about 3 million cows to over 5 million in response to rising market demand for protein products. There has been significant diversification in land use over the past 2 decades. In the earlier days, no one would have imagined what farmers could achieve when the focus was merely on producing more lambs. This change led to a shift in the productivity of farming in New Zealand and better exports.
New Zealand's trade deficit has narrowed recently, but it's still a negative number. So what do we have to sell more of, and who to?
Productivity since the reforms. Before 1984, the productivity of New Zealand's farming sector grew at a rate of 1% annually. However, since the reforms, the increase has risen to nearly 4% per year. The agricultural sector outperforms every other sector of the New Zealand economy. Its contribution to the country's GDP has increased, rising from just over 14% in 1986-87 to 16.6% in 1999 to 2000. This phenomenon is nearly unprecedented in any other developed nation. Agricultural trade holds immense significance for New Zealand, as it is an area where they excel. They depend on exports from their biological industries to fund the importation of goods from around the globe that they cannot produce efficiently themselves. Since the economic transition, New Zealand's shift toward a fully open economy has generated nearly 450,000 net jobs. With a population of 5 million, that is a significant number of jobs, and the agricultural sector continues to create more as it grows. Numerous misconceptions exist regarding trade being detrimental to employment. However, New Zealand has shown the contrary. In fact, trade is beneficial for job creation. A liberalised trading framework not only fosters investment, but also allows nations to produce according to their comparative advantages and trade in areas of strength. This results in a more effective allocation of resources, leading to increased wealth and employment opportunities. What can other nations learn from the impeccable success of New Zealand in agriculture?
And now I'm working in a farm, feeding the calves. It's a great job, really. I am enjoying it a lot.
Lessons from New Zealand's agricultural exploits. One key to New Zealand's agricultural prosperity is its cooperative strategy. Farmers have established networks to pool resources, mitigate financial risks, and market their products collectively. Fonterra, a dairy cooperative owned by approximately 10,000 farmers, accounts for 30% of global dairy exports and is the largest company by revenue in New Zealand. This collective approach to farming fosters progress in the agricultural sector in New Zealand. Other countries can also adopt this method of oneness to produce a better and stronger products that will give them a competitive advantage in a global market. So, instead of having various companies exporting the same kind of product, pulling their expertise together will lead to a better outcome. New Zealand also focuses on producing and exporting more high-value agricultural goods. Instead of providing subsidies to farmers, the government has focused on funding research aimed at enhancing productivity and sustainability. Advances in breeding, pasture management, and the reduction of greenhouse gases have enabled New Zealand's agricultural industry to stay competitive in a world that places greater importance on environmentally conscious practices. New Zealand's narrative serves as a compelling challenge to the notion that developed economies must move away from agriculture or other traditional sectors. New Zealand stayed with agriculture and has used it to build and sustain its economy. New Zealand concentrated on its strength, created high-value agricultural products, and built a robust and thriving economy. This strategy can work for various countries if they adopt it. Australia can focus on mining, China on manufacturing, and Canada on its trade with the US.
It sells New Zealand incredibly well. Top New Zealand wine in the UK is very strong in Canada and the US, growing really quickly in China. We do need to do more to continue to promote the New Zealand brand.
There is a higher chance of economic prosperity for nations that concentrate on areas where they have a competitive advantage. In New Zealand, farming is not only for the old and tired. A considerable number of young people are involved in farming. This demographic presents a population younger than those in the US, UK, or Australia. Agriculture in New Zealand is not just about meeting the immediate needs of the people. It is a strong force that has been built over years of dedication to give New Zealand a voice in a world it is isolated from. With a strong internal regulation, New Zealand has been able to change the narrative concerning agricultural countries. Will other countries replicate this model for success? Thank you for watching. What do you think the future holds for New Zealand? Can they maintain this position, or is it not sustainable? Leave a comment, please like this video, share and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.